I'm somewhat familiar, but you know, I still consider myself somewhat ignorant between the difference of Ethiopia and Eritrea. So you said your mom is from Eritrea and your dad is from Ethiopia.
Yes.
So can you explain to the people from your understanding what the difference is?
Yes, from my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
I will say it's a very unique blend. It's like, you know, those countries have historically been at odds. I have friends whose family members threatened to kill themselves over the idea of their children being with someone who is Ethiopian and they're Eritrean, or you know, it's like being with someone who's Christian and Muslim,
Right.
And that's something I never really had to be exposed to because I grew up overseas in other countries. So I understood that, but you know, you really realize coming back here, when you back in the community, you realize like Eritreans and Ethiopians typically don't marry each other.
Season 2 of Gentlemen's History Hour is sponsored by HughRepublic.com, HUE-Republic.com. Go to HughRepublic.com and get the latest colors to rep your hue. Gentlemen's History Hour, Season 2.
Welcome back to another episode of GHH Sessions. This is Gentlemen's History Hour, but today we have a very special edition. We're going to call this the Gentleman and a Lady edition. And so I definitely want to, you know, big up our very special guest that we have here. Her name is Rahel, and all of the sisters who's been on our platform. Shout out to Seneca, shout out to Asia, and all the sisters that have shown us love, because we know, you know, this is a kind of a male-dominated platform, but we definitely like to show that balance when we get the opportunity to do that. You know what I mean? Again, so we have a very special guest that's here, and we're going to talk about some things. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gentlemen's History Hour or GHH Sessions, Miss Rahel.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad you can be here with us, because we definitely like to open up this platform to new perspectives. And I know a lot of y'all are wondering what's going on. So yeah, we played a little musical chairs today. So I came from behind the camera. So I got a shout out to my partner in rhyme, partner in crime, Equality. He's behind the boards today, handling the production duties. And so I get to kind of come and be in front of the camera for y'all. So I'm gonna go back behind the camera ultimately. But today, yeah, I wanted to talk to my people that, you know, I invited here to the show.
I appreciate that. It makes me feel special.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So welcome again. And so what we're going to do is we're going to, you know, kind of slowly walk through a little bit of your personal history. I want to get some of your background, but also I want to get your views kind of on kind of like what it's like being a woman and an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Also, you know, and how you balance that with, you know, kind of living the corporate life and how all of that kind of like blends in together and kind of makes you the special person that you are.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start.
I'll do my best.
That's cool. No, don't worry. We good. We good. So we'll go ahead and start from the beginning. We'll start from the beginning. So so I want you to tell the people a little bit about yourself. So tell the people like where you're from, where your people are from, and what was it like growing up.
Okay. How much time do I have? It could be real long, but
let's go. Let's just we're gonna cook.
Okay. So my background: my parents, my mom is from Eritrea, my father is from Ethiopia. And they both came here on scholarship to the U.S., but they met here in the U.S. They came separately. And I was in Texas, in Dallas, but yet I moved when I was a baby, like at a year and a half. We moved to Louisiana, and then at 5, like right before kindergarten, first grade, I moved to Nigeria. And then I lived there for about 5.5 years, so all of elementary. And then we moved to Indonesia, which was really interesting. You know, a huge Islamic community. And we lived there until I was ready for high school. My parents, you know, they believe in putting the kids first, so they knew that I would end up going to college in the U.S. And my father took an early retirement and came back to Texas. I completed 10th through 12th grade in Dallas. And then I went to UT, and I studied chemical engineering. And I can't say it was a passion choice decision. I actually wanted to be a pilot, but still, it was one of those things where it's like there's not many of us in this program, and that's enough for me to be like, I can do it anyways, even if I'm not into it. And so it led me to Houston.
Yeah.
And I have been here pretty much since, working in the oil and gas business. My parents kept on traveling up until maybe 10 years ago or so, and they moved to Houston. So now Houston's my home because wherever they live is my home.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so that's pretty much how I came here.
So let me ask you this. First question is, so do you have any memories of when you actually were living in Texas
God.
as I know you were super young.
When I was 1 year old?
When you were 1 year old?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I only have pictures. I only have memories of when I was in high school.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have memories when I was in Nigeria, Indonesia. Those are really formative years of my life.
Yeah.
I definitely am grateful for those experiences. I think that being in places where you are, you don't have the same type of history as America does, you can really be yourself and not feel like you have expectations of what someone like who looks like me ought to be. So my dad was really adamant about that because he's very proud. He grew up in Ethiopia, and he told my mom, she had her own career here. He was like, we're going to move to Nigeria because I don't want my kids being raised over here. And he worked in oil and gas. And so I'm grateful for it because being in a continent full of people that look like me was very much an inviting environment.
Oh man, that's dope. So man, that's a lot to unpack off of just that little intro. I mean, like, I got so many questions.
Yeah.
So
from Louisiana too. So imagine.
You got a nice gumbo.
Louisiana.
You got a nice gumbo
Yeah.
mix of things going on with your experiences and your background.
Yeah.
So okay, for the people out there that may not know, I'm somewhat familiar, but I still consider myself somewhat ignorant between the difference of Ethiopia and Eritrea. So you said your mom is from Eritrea and your dad is from Ethiopia.
Yes.
So can you explain to the people from your understanding what the difference is?
Yes, from my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
I will say it's a very unique blend. It's like, those countries have historically been at odds. I have friends whose family members threatened to kill themselves over the idea of their children being with someone who is Ethiopian and they're Eritrean, or it's like being with someone who's Christian and Muslim,
Right.
And that's something I never really had to be exposed to because I grew up overseas in other countries. So I understood that, but you really realize coming back here when you back in the community, you realize like Eritreans and Ethiopians typically don't marry each other. And so my father, he's from Tigray, which is the northern part of Ethiopia. They actually speak the same language. So the Amharic is the national language, but there's regional language. There's like 84 different dialects.
Wow.
Okay, so the regional language of Tigray, which is like the third most dominant ethnic group, which is the northern region bordering Eritrea, they speak the same language as the Eritreans. So they were of the same people. At the time, we had different emperors at the time. This is based on what I understand. That's why Ethiopia was never colonized. We've been a unified people under emperors, and there's different emperors who have different type of power, of dominance during certain eras.
Yeah.
And the emperor of that time was not from Tigray, and when the Italians were trying to invade, he said he allowed them to go up to the northern part of Ethiopia, which was actually Eritrea now. And so by doing that, he was able to fracture that ethnic group. So a portion of the people were part of Ethiopia still, and the other portion was part of now what we know as Eritrea. And now, as you know, with colonialism, the influences of other these countries that come in and infiltrate, like they affect the feeling of unity between the people.
Man.
And
yeah.
so the Eritreans felt separate from Ethiopians. And so at one point they were back under the ruling of Ethiopia during the Dirk regime, which is like a communist regime. It was oppressive, and that's when the time a lot of people were fleeing it was during my parents' generation. So a lot of people were put in prison or killed, my family members as well, from my mom and dad's siblings. And during that time, they were able to be free from Ethiopia, but they wanted their own country back. And so they were still considered their separate country. And now it's under ruling of a person who's still in power from when that country was free. So he's been in power for like 30 years. I can't talk too much more about that part, but I will say that, I personally believe colonialism is the reason why we're not a unified people.
So let me ask you this. So you mentioned earlier about like the number of dialects, 84 dialects. So would you say that like other parts of the continent of, Africa, that in Ethiopia it was kind of more tribal as well.
Yeah, it's how it is everywhere. Even
yeah.
I tell this to my friends, like with the Black Americans, right? Y'all have different dialects depending on what region you're from.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and even I think the Webster Dictionary is going to start coming out with some type of dictionary in reference to that. And so it's regional based. I mean, you might have some common language when it comes to those who trade, merchants, right? So you have like that main language. That's why Tanzania and Kenya have the same language, you know, the merchants. And so we also are a very blended country. We have a lot of Muslim people and Christian Orthodox people in Ethiopia, and we have Hebrews. So it's like we're a blend of all types of people and historic people. So there's going to be all types of dialects within that community.
So where did a lot of the people from Ethiopia, where did they flee to? You said that they were
those who were during that time, they would flee to usually, you know, the Kenya, the bordering countries that are not under that type of oppression. And then, you know, they get sponsored. Something you get sponsored to Canada. You get sponsored. I have a lot of family that got sponsored to Sweden. So I have family from Sweden. You know, in the U.S. You know, people refugee status. Right.
Just went wherever you could, you know, find that
Some
refuge.
people went to Israel because they were Hebrews, right?
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Okay, so kind of a connection, but maybe not. So like Nipsey Hussle, the rapper that passed recently. You know, rest in peace, rest in power to Nipsey. So, are you familiar with like what his tribe was? Was he Ethiopian or Eritrean?
He was Eritrean.
Okay,
yeah.
So,
but I don't know much more behind that. But I know he was half Eritrean.
Oh, he was half.
Okay. I believe from his father's side. And but you know, coming from a country like Eritrea and Ethiopia, you get a lot of pride because it's the only country that wasn't colonized. Now, Eritrea had Italian settlers, but there was no enslaving of any people. It was literally they just settled there. I mean, I have a lot of cousins who are from parents who are, you know, were married to Italians. So they literally invested and built it up, kind of like they did in South Africa. But there wasn't really, I never heard from my family there was any enslavement. So coming from a country where it's a lot of history, a lot of like Islamic, you know, Arab communities respect Ethiopia because of the history. You get a lot of pride from there. So I think, you know, with Nipsey, he has, you know, he had that pride within him coming from a place with that type of legacy. Yeah. And I feel the same, you know.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, so you mentioned that your dad worked in oil and gas, and then now you work in oil and gas. So did you feel like you were kind of like following in his footsteps in a certain type of way? Was he also an engineer, or you studied chemical engineering? Oh, he's a physicist. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
He's a physicist. So he wanted to be a professor, and he was sponsored by his government. But then, like I said, the war happened, and he had to flee, and he got another scholarship and became a geophysicist. He found love in that, and he went into oil and gas. So he stumbled upon it. For me, I just feel like who knows what they want to be really at 18 years old, you know?
Yeah.
And so my dad said, pick what you like. And I like chemistry. I like math, calculus. So I just was like chemical engineering, you know? I had no idea what that was, honestly. And then when I got into it, I was like, I hate it. But then me being like the person that I am, I'm like, I'm going to still finish it. I'm not going to waste my money. I've invested in it. I've always been very conscious of money. My father always made me very conscious of money. So I was like, I'm just going to finish it, you know? And also the fact that people were always giving me statistics like, oh, 50% of Black people who come into engineering drop out. Little things like that. I hate stuff like that because it sets the mindset off. So I'm like, okay, well then I'm going to do it still, you know? So yeah, if I followed in the footsteps of math because I've always liked math.
Nice.
I used to do math, you know, for fun and workbooks and stuff. You don't have to memorize. You're just solving a puzzle. Yeah. So I think of myself as a problem solver.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting you say that. That's actually like a perfect segue. I got for 2 questions down the line. But my next question that I had for you was more so about like, how do you feel like, you know, your upbringing impacted you and shaped like who you are today? Oh, I know we're all on a journey, right? So yeah. So it's never like a destination; it's more of a journey. So kind of like where you are in your journey, like how do you feel like, you know, between like, you know, your parents' story, kind of like your connections between your father and your mother, like you know, the culture that you come from, like how do you think that shapes your perspective, especially being now a citizen in the United States of America? So, and we have a certain construct and dynamic as well. So
it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
there's so many moments in my life that I recall that were life-changing and transfer and like kind of like were permanent staples in my brain today. Just imagine, I was born into privilege. I was born in the U.S. and I came from, you know, a two-parent home that was educated, very different. And in Louisiana is the last memory I really have. So we were minorities there. You know, people would, my dad even told me, like, people would think that he was like a drug dealer or something. They're like, how did he have a house here? My parents had me late in life, like 38, 39.
Okay.
So they had me and my sisters late in life. They had already some stability, but they had late in life because they had a journey before they got there, right? So being in that environment where my father, like I said, he's very proud. He would tell me about this one gentleman. I can't remember his name, but the David Duke. The
Louisiana politician.
He was trying to run for like governor at one point, and my father would tell me he would take down his flyers in the middle of the night because he didn't want that in his area. But like my mom would be, you know, scared because it's like, why are you doing something that can get you killed? You know, we're in a place that doesn't care for us. And so,
it's a hotbed in Louisiana.
That's when I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
He's very strong-minded. I get that from him. Let's just go somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
Because I can't be in a place like this. And so, okay, imagine living in the suburbs, clean-cut place. I go to Nigeria, and I remember vividly going in a car where I was surrounded with kids who were living off the streets. Kids begging for food, kids with torn clothes. Imagine being 5, 6 years old, never seeing that in a day of your life, and then going there and you're thinking everything is just going to be well fed, and you go there and you're like, why is this person looking like me in this situation?
Yeah.
My parents understood it. They grew up in Africa, but I did not understand that. I wasn't prepared for that. They didn't think about things that they should have prepared us for.
Yeah, you were living in a bubble almost, like, and not realizing it.
Yeah, and America is a bubble. We don't share borders besides Mexico and Canada. And even that, everything that's messaged here is not world news. It's always American or United States, I should say, because America is a lot of places, but United States-centric, you know, city-centric news. And so when you go elsewhere, you're not really prepared outside of the messaging, right? So that was very impacting for me. I'm like, I am literally a lottery ticket. My life is a lottery ticket. And then growing up and having to also be in a place where you have to learn about their customs, their culture, versus coming in with this assumption America is the right way. Our way is the right way. Like, I did not grow up that way. So I always had to be very adaptive, you know.
Yeah, that's a certain, definitely there's a certain arrogance that the average American has because I guess, you know, being a dominant world figure for a long time, you can go almost anywhere in the world and people will adapt. Still speak your language. You don't have to worry 100%. About learning. I think that's
they all
a
speak
huge
English.
Right.
Yes. Go to China. There'd be like the audacity. Why would we learn English? You're in China, you know, because they never were colonized, and they expect that from you.
Right. Just being a person thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm a student, 4.0, all this kind of stuff. But then I go and meet people who speak 3 or 4 languages from other places, and I'm like, damn, I don't know shit.
Yeah,
I'm kind of like,
and you're just thinking like the way of life is like the way we've been programmed to live is the best quality life available, but yet there's all types of variations of way someone can live their life.
No doubt.
So that, imagine just like being in like, so Nigeria is a very dominant culture with a lot of Nigerians that live in Houston. And then Indonesia, number 1 Islamic Asian community. And so, you know, I went through also a lot of experiences there, a lot of freedom, actually way more freedom there than in Nigeria. I had to be patrolled a lot in Nigeria. We had armed guards, but then in Indonesia we did not. So that was cool. And then I came to the US, and that was, for me, actually the biggest culture shock, because I came to a public high school, and people didn't even know like how people lived outside of the US. They assumed we lived in huts, or, you know, we had drivers, cooks, we lived in homes, but it was hard to relate to people who grew up in the same community their whole entire life, when I was so used to like diversity.
Let me ask you this. So how would you rate the education prior to college in the U.S. versus abroad in Nigeria, and you said Indonesia?
Yeah. I feel like the education here is too simple. Yes. I remember I did a paper in in middle school. In middle school about sex trafficking of kids. They allowed us to do those type of, they allowed us to do research on what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Also, the cool thing was I did geometry in middle school. I wasn't told, oh, you just go and do whatever you're able to, you're supposed to do part of this program of what grade level. If you test higher enough to where you do excel and you could do algebra in middle school, they'll put you in the algebra course. So I wasn't having to fit this box. That part was really frustrating because when I came to the U.S., they were like, oh, well, it's the same, different system. They made me repeat classes when I came to the U.S.
What?
They didn't respect the fact that I came from a school outside the U.S. They assumed it was like lower. So I took geometry twice. It was so easy. I became lazy, honestly.
Once again, the arrogance.
Yeah.
It can't be on the level of America, right?
Yeah, it's like, are you investing in the kids for, to better your economy, or are you trying to more so control them? Like, what is it?
Yeah. Wow. That's why I always say, the U.S. Is rapidly becoming a third world country. I used to say that. Now I know that we're already a third world country.
I feel it.
We're already there. I used to say that 20 years ago. I was like, just looking simply at the education system.
Yeah.
And where we were with our education versus other countries. And then I'm a techie by day or whatever, so I see who's getting most of the tech jobs or how we're outsourcing. Almost every major company I worked for ended up outsourcing to a lot of folks from India and the Philippines and
But we're capable.
Right.
People came here. It was a brain drain to America. People came to America because the economy was better. You could really have a quality of life. A lot of countries were losing their most talented folks, like my father and my mother, to come here.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're not cultivating that legacy is really disappointing.
Yeah, we won't even pay our teachers. How disappointing is that?
I feel like I have conspiracy theories behind it. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like they really want us to go towards Alexa and Siri in teaching our children, and that's gonna be run by corporations. That's my theory on it.
Man, I can't even dispute you on that because if you really think about it, that's kind of where it's going. I mean, our kids don't even write anymore over here.
Yeah. Think about all of these corporations that are now influencing our government. They can benefit off of that.
Capitalism always wins. If you got to, as my man Equality always says, follow the dollar.
Follow
if
the dollar.
If you want the answers, follow the dollar.
So 100%, that's the truth.
Yeah, no doubt. But speaking of the dollar, and something you mentioned earlier, that was a perfect segue, by the way. So not only do you have this great thriving career on the corporate side,
thank you.
But you're also an entrepreneur. So can you tell the people a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur, about your company and your product? Yeah,
for sure. So my product was born from Hurricane Harvey. I was one of those people who were flooded at that time. And coincidentally, I was quitting my job, actually. And I was quitting my job because I had a near-death experience from a car accident. And I told myself, and in that period, I had to be rehabbed back into an able body that I am. And it was very humbling because I'm very independent. And it told me that the audacity of me thinking that I'd be able to reach a certain age and be able to still be mobile when, you cannot really account for that. Yeah. So I wanted to have an intermediate retirement, and I had money to do that. And by coincidence, I was also flooded. So I was like, purge, let things go. But what it also taught me, because I was living in a condominium at the time, that a lot of people who were around me were having to deal with the recovery process. It was very long. I had a neighbor who I was very close to. She made her money off of doing canvas artwork, and she was a cancer survivor. So I was like, she couldn't save her artwork during that time. And that really impacted me, and just the long, process of being able to rebuild. So my best friend and I were talking about what could be done differently, and we discussed the idea of I wish there was a way to protect things from getting flooded. And she's still working in corporate. I quit my job, so I was traveling, and then during the travels, Hurricane Irma happened, and I believe Maria as well, which happened in Puerto Rico. And I was like, man, like I might as well just put something out there right now so that someone could have an option, because people don't have options except for insurance or no insurance, and not people in Puerto Rico that don't even have options like that really. And so I decided to create a capsule. It's called ClimaGuard, and literally it's just a welded polyethylene capsule that could be a barrier to floodwaters. And so whatever you put in it, even in a car, could, because it's big enough for a car. I made that important fat part because in Houston we're dependent on our cars. We don't have public transportation here.
Yeah.
So people need their cars. I also
For
knew
sure.
someone who lost their job because they couldn't get their car fixed. So that part was important to me, to make it large enough for that and other things. And so I decided to figure how to figure. I was like, I'm an engineer. I can figure it out. And then I learned about Sarah Blakely and how she started things from the ground up by selling a vision. So I was like, I can sell vision, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, I've never done it before, so why not just try, you know? And then that's the other thing. Like when I was traveling, and I was solo traveling for like a year, a lot of my time was spent in Latin America, and I saw all of like these pyramids, and I was just like, man, like humans are so, you know, we've cultivated so much genius that like to assume that we're just one trick pony is very limiting,
Yeah.
you know? And so I was like, let me go and just exercise that and try something different. So I went to China for the first time. I've never been there. And I like met people. I went to like various different factories, and I was like, I know R&D, I could figure that out. And I met a manufacturer there who bought the idea, and they sell tons of merch, outdoor goods to the US and also to Europe. And they were willing to fund the materials, custom made, and allow me to buy it in batches to see if I could start this business in the US.
Whoa, so you just pulled up to China,
Yeah.
like, yo, I got
never
this
been.
idea, I got this concept,
Yeah, so
I got
much faith.
this product.
Yeah.
But I mean that, you know, that's a certain thing, like that's a certain je ne sais quoi that the average person doesn't possess. Like what was in you that kind of gave you that fuel, you
The
know,
fuel?
or not only the fuel, but like it's really like audacity. It's like,
Yeah, the audacity.
Yeah.
So again, Sarah Blakely, if you heard her story,
Yeah.
she made Spanx. She's, you know, it's $1 billion company. She started with like $7,000 selling, you know, fax machines. So she had the audacity. And I was like, if she got the audacity, and now we got, you know, that was back in, I don't know, 1990s or something. We got phones and, you know, all types of new like
Right.
platforms out there, and there's like conferences. Like I'm like, it's even easier now. So I really just sold myself on the fact that like I figured if she could do it back then, I should definitely be able to do it right now. And because I traveled a lot, and like I said, I'm adaptive, the way I grew up, I figured I'll just adapt. But that, again, that's me being like the arrogant American mindset, because I was like, everywhere I traveled, like in Latin America, I could speak a little Spanish, English, it works. I just assumed I could do the same thing in China, but that wasn't the case. So I had to regroup after my first visit. I had to really regroup and really think about being in places that were highly concentrated of international community, which was Shanghai, and being in an area that like was kind of like a Times Square. So like, and meet other locals there and become friends. I even went on Bumble. You have Bumble BFF. By the way, there's Bumble, like, you know, you can meet a partner, and then there's also BFF. I met people who were there, like, and made friends with people who lived there. I went to the WeWork there. Like, I networked, and I found connects that way.
oh man,
Yeah.
talk about, you know, being resourceful.
Resourceful.
Yeah.
Technology.
And yeah, that's the beauty of technology, man, when it's used in the right way. So, you know, we have so much distractions and stuff now through technology, but
Don't hold yourself
so
back.
technology is very powerful. Like,
Yeah.
really, that's the primary reason I'm on social media, is because I know like how it can be leveraged.
100%.
in a way. And I try, you know, I try my best, but I do get distracted at times when I'm trying to
That's
go in
also
there
the
for
point.
work and to be productive, but you can't help it because you got so many things, alerts and all that stuff like popping up in your way. But a question I have for you is like, you know, Dan, you've been international with how you kind of started your business and kind of started your entrepreneurship. Like, have you faced any like barriers or challenges being the fact that you're a woman doing business or being an entrepreneur? Like, do you feel like that may have hindered you in any way
you have to
or limited
understand-
you in any way?
I came from oil and gas, so the barriers have always been there. I've always been a token, in a sense.
Okay.
You know, being a petite, you know, Black engineer, I've always had to deal with some communication challenges that other people don't have to deal with. One, I have a master's degree. People still question whether I'm, what if I'm doing something that makes sense, and they challenge it. People, these people, I hate to say it, but like being in the field, these men are not around a lot of women. Sometimes they don't know how to like check themselves professionally and make certain advances I don't want to receive. And even higher up. So like I've been in that community, being in the oil and gas field. So coming into entrepreneurship, I was, I think, prepared. So, my mind is already much on the whole, like, strategy, all about strategy. Thankfully in China, like they're very much about, they are focused on, what's the word I'm looking for? Custom, they're very, they have a lot of tradition on how they engage, right? So, it's giving the two hands of like the cards and all that. So that part in China was not an issue. Coming back to the States and having to network could be a challenge because it's still a man's world in that sense. So, my whole mindset again with Sarah Blakely is like, I don't allow the people who don't want to invite me in the space to limit me from where I want to go. So I just have to, again, strategize on how I can create that opportunity for myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So we're going to pivot a little bit. So we're going to shift gears slightly, but we're still talking about like business and entrepreneurship. But what I want to do is kind of like pick your brain a little bit. We had a few conversations off camera about investing. So what I wanted to get was like, kind of like, what would be your 60-second advice for somebody to come to you and says, oh, well, how do I go about investing? Like, how should my portfolio look? Or like, what should be my first step to like trying to look into whether it's starting a business or just investing in stocks or investing in real estate, or whatever. Like, so how would you advise somebody to like approach that? My advice is to invest where you can be committed and interested in for the long term. It's a fool's game to like look at people who say, oh, I've done this with this business, and you just think it's a money grab. You will play yourself. Business is truly a long-term gain, and you have to really be into what you're doing to capitalize off of it, because people don't do the homework, people don't do the research. Right. So you have to be into it in order to be able to capitalize. So I would say first, focus on what would match your interest and motivate you to go and deep dive, and then explore that investment opportunity. Okay. So like for me, real estate was now my new enjoy, because I enjoy helping people find a home that they have enjoyment from, because I enjoy to serve. So that's something that I'm like, I want to be in spaces and create spaces that people could feel like I'm safe here. As a woman especially. So thinking about people who are traveling, professionals, where they feel safe, where they feel like they're at home when they're away from home. Those things interest me. So I started going into real estate during the pandemic because of that. Okay. And so your comfort, would you say at this point, your comfort as far as your investment portfolio? Me, I obviously believe in investing in yourself first and foremost, or whatever. But outside of investing in yourself, would you say that your comfort level is more now on the real estate side? Like, would you say, if you gave a number or percentage to it, would you say, okay, at this point, I feel more comfortable investing like 60% of my investments in real estate, maybe 30% in stocks, maybe 10% in my business or entrepreneurship, like. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I definitely, I go through seasons. So I built ClimaGuard, which is my e-commerce business. Yeah. I spent, 2 years building it. I have a team that works behind the scenes now. So I can offload that to where I'm now more so, I'll say 10% into it, 10 to 20% into it. Gotcha. So that gave space onto my next. And real estate is something that I was like, I'm here in Houston, my family's here, I want to be close to them, let me invest in that. So I will say real estate now is taking up a majority of my focus outside of my job. So I'll say my job and my real estate probably, my job probably takes a majority of it right now. Right. And then whatever's left over, majority of it, the rest of that, maybe we'll just say 40% will go towards real estate. Nice. Yeah.
there's so many things. There's so much to learn, right? You got to learn about the tax advantages. You got to learn about the different types of investing in real estate. You could do short-term investing. You could do multifamily. You could do just more so flipping. Like there's all types of things that you could do. So you don't need to be so spread out. Like because even focusing on just that area, there's a lot to do there. Man,
okay. I got so much I want to talk to you about. We're going to have to definitely come back and do a part 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, to continue this part of the discussion. So on that note, though, so I want to get one thing from you. So one book recommendation that you would give.
Oh, you didn't ask me that earlier.
What's your favorite book? I know I didn't. I just kind of came up with that just now.
I mean, I don't want to be cliche, but there's 2 books that I really liked.
Yeah.
One, I'll say The 4 Agreements.
Okay.
Was one of them, and I think maybe I've told you before. I mean, it's a short book, it's 35 books, 35 pages or something. I don't know, it's really short. But I like the fact that it talked about it's a sin to not honor yourself, and like you said, investing in yourself is important. I think that especially as women, we give so much of ourselves away, and we're so used to being servants. I want to say, which is a beautiful thing to be a servant, but to other people and ignore ourselves. Now I'm realizing, like you said, you have to invest in yourself because at that point you can become fruitful to serve more. So it helps change my perspective a lot. 4 Agreements. The 4
Agreements. I dig it. Okay, so on that note, folks, we're going to wrap up this episode of GHH Sessions. I want to thank again my special guest, Rahel, for joining us. And don't forget to go ahead and hit the like button, comment, and most importantly, subscribe so you can get our notifications when we do drop these new episodes. We're going to come back and we're going to bring Rahel back for some more in-depth discussions. And again, thank her for joining us. GHA Sessions. This is a wrap, and we out.
Thank you.
If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.